Yair was doing everything he wanted. It wasn't just he was piecing him up. It was like he was doing everything that he wanted to do. Ortega's just got a great chin. He's very tough. He's durable. And he's also got that Nate Diaz factor where he's like never really out of a fight. Even if he's like losing the majority of the rounds, he can just like fucking throw up a triangle last minute and he can get you.
How you doing, fight fans? It's Timmy Shoes with Inside Fighting, and I'm back with another episode of Insider Betting, joined once again by our editor-in-chief, Jesse Rowe. Jesse, how you doing, my man?
Doing great. Let a little break. Now I get to come back and talk about fighting again. Very excited. Excited for this card. I love. I live close to the Mexican border. I live in Los Angeles, so I really have an affinity for Mexican sports heroes, and just I'm a big fan of. I'm a big fan of Mexico, so I'm excited for it.
Well, you were in Mexico on vacation. Now
I
the
was
UFC is in Mexico.
not a big fan of the water in Mexico. Big
Yeah,
fan of
yeah.
the country of Mexico.
Well, hopefully none of the fighters are drinking whatever you drank while you were
Mm-hmm.
in Cancun or Cabo, I should say, right?
Cancun,
Cabo.
Cancun.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I It had to be one of those. But
yeah.
we've got some amazing fights. We're going to be looking at three fights today, three of the biggest Mexican stars in the UFC. The first one is the youngest signed fighter under contract. He is my doppelganger, the guy who looks just like me. Don't know how this became a joke at Inside Fighting, but it's a joke at Inside Fighting. Raul Rosas Jr., also known as Timmy Jr. He
Yeah.
is fighting, and he is a minus 218 favorite. He is fighting Ricky Turcios, who is plus 180 underdog. Jesse, give us your thoughts.
So I'm trying to remember something because I interviewed somebody who fought Ricky Turcios. So hold on, really quick. I'm looking at his fight history because I interviewed somebody. Oh, it was Brady Heaston. I interviewed Brady Heaston talking about this fight, and my initial thoughts are minus 218 for Raul makes a lot of sense, especially in Mexico. Raul is coming off of a win where he got a knockout, which is super surprising because he's so grappling heavy, especially he's so
Yep.
young. His tools are so raw, but I thought he showed some improvements in his striking. So that was very exciting to see that it was just exciting to see that he got a finish in a different way where he wasn't just targeting like
Right.
backpacking somebody and then getting the submission choke, that he was actually going for, obviously he was fighting a tomato can, let's be real, but he got the knockout regardless. This is actually a tough fight for him. I know that he was a heavy favorite against Christian Rodriguez too, and that was not a great performance. He really gassed out after round one. I think that Raul has like a little bit of Hamzat in him. He's like the Mexican Hamzat a little bit, where he really just he goes like very wrestling, grappling heavy, just like he's like right off the bat, he just fucking charges and goes for it. I think Raul will win this fight. I think Ricky's a tough matchup for him. I think that he has to pace himself a little bit this fight, not let the juices. He's going to be the adrenaline's going to be pumping. He's fighting in Mexico City in front of a big Mexican crowd. He's very young. He's going to have to keep that adrenaline under control. But I will take Raul in this fight. I think minus 218 is good enough to bet it on the money line, but plus 200 submission is very interesting to consider. And I think because I could see him just winning on control time in this fight. I'll take plus 200 submission. I think that's a very, very, very. I'm surprised the odds are that good, if I'm being honest.
You brought up an interesting point about his cardio. If I'm not mistaken, Mexico City is at very high elevation, is it not?
It is.
So that is going to be a factor that always affects people's cardio. I know I just actually was just talking about how upset I was that Jose Aldo had to fight Marab, of all people, at elevation. So I think that was a huge mistake. Aldo should have taken that fight at not elevation. He should have done it in Vegas. That's a whole different tangent. But so that's something to consider. Tercios by decision is a plus 400. So if you're going to take the underdog, I think him by decision because, Raul is very tough. I don't see him getting finished. But he lost to Christian Rodriguez. It was a decision, if I'm not mistaken. So if you'd like the underdog, I think Tercios by decision plus 400. Very nice odds. Otherwise, I'm right in line with you. Rosas by submission is a plus 200. I don't know why I keep wanting to call the kid Rojas, but
It's just weird. It's just weird that it's a plus 200 for submission and for decision. It's like the same,
yep.
but he's a minus 218 on the money line. It's an interesting line. I don't know. I don't know what to think of it, but
Yeah, and if I'm not, I think he's like a plus 550 to knockout. So
right.
to win by
And he's
knockout.
coming off
So
a knockout win too. It's
yeah.
interesting. Very strange line, but I think submission, flip a coin, submission or decision, flip a coin on that.
All right, moving right along, we've got two featherweights, very big featherweights. Yair Rodriguez, who was the interim champion at featherweight, he is a minus 148, and he is fighting Brian Ortega for the second time, plus 124. For people who don't remember, Ortega lost their first fight because of a shoulder injury. You know, some people thought maybe that this fight had to be run back at some point because Brian didn't lose in a legitimate way. It was sort of like a freak accident. I didn't feel that way. I thought Yair caused the injury with the submission attempt. Jesse, give us your thoughts.
I just rewatched this fight yesterday. UFC posted it on they post their free fights occasionally when it's fight week. I thought Yair was piecing Ortega the fuck up, if I'm being honest. I thought he was piecing him up.
Yep.
Yair was doing everything he wanted. It wasn't just he was piecing him up. It was like he was doing everything that he wanted to do. Ortega's just got a great chin. He's very tough. He's durable. And he's also got that Nate Diaz factor where he's like never really out of a fight. Even if he's like losing the majority of the rounds, he can just like fucking throw up a triangle last minute and he can get you. So Ortega always has that, like when you call it a puncher's chance, he's got like a jujitsu chance. I don't know what you call it. You know, he's got a submissions chance to get himself out of it. And he's got some decent boxing. He has improved his boxing over the years too. But I just think Yair's striking is like, if this fight stays on the feet, Yair is going to have his way. And the altitude thing, you know, I wasn't thinking about that until you brought it up, because that's obviously a huge factor. I think it actually favors the grapplers more than the strikers, only because like if you can get a guy down early, you're like you just gas out so much. I think that's what happened to Leon in the first fight against Usman, or the second fight against Usman when he knocked him out. Was he was losing that fight 3-1 after winning round 1 pretty easily. Because I think he gassed out. And it was like, because then you look at it in the next fight, obviously Usman's coming off of a knockout, but it just, the elevation difference, you could clearly see there was a difference there.
Leon said as much after the fight too.
What?
Leon said in the post-fight press conference, he said, after the first round, my body just wasn't responding and I didn't know why. So
it's a real factor. It favors the grappler, but I'm not sure if Ortega's, based on what I saw in the first fight, I'm not sure Ortega is going to be like super eager to get this to the ground either. I don't think Ortega should be a number 3 in the division. I feel like he hasn't won since 2020. I feel like his rating is a little bit inflated. I really like him. I'm just speaking honestly. I feel like it's been overdue for him to be dropped in the rankings a little bit. I think Yair is going to win, and I think minus 148 is an incredible line to take Yair on in Mexico City. Plus 180 for KO, TKO, DQ is interesting. Decision 250 is interesting. I will take Yair money line. I think that's good. I think it's good enough. Yair money line. Yeah.
I like Yair in this fight for a few reasons. Brian Ortega is one of those guys. I think he could be champion if he learned some wrestling, but he's a classic example. And I've talked to you about this before. Classic example of a jiu-jitsu player, a guy who's got great submissions, who wants to become a boxer instead of learning a single leg or a double leg. We just saw it this weekend with Mackenzie Dern, which was trying to throw hands with Amanda Lemos instead of learning a blast double leg, learning a single leg. Get these people to the ground where you are strongest. Okay,
where she would have won the fight had she gotten that fight to the ground earlier. By the way,
exactly. And Brian Ortega is the same way. Brian Ortega is trying to box with Max Holloway. Why aren't you trying to take Max Holloway down? Not an easy task. I understand that. But, you know, in that sense, Brian Ortega is a guy, like, I think he has the X factors to be at the top of the division, like he's ranked. And I agree with you. He's been ranked too long. I think inactivity should have knocked him down a bit. But, you know, he's just one of those frustrating guys. It's like the talent is there. The X factor is there. I think he could be a big star. Why doesn't this guy try to get into his wheelhouse. All that being said, if you like the underdog, I like doing this for the fans. If you like to pick the underdog, Brian Ortega is a plus 124, but him to win by submission, which I think is his best chance, is a plus 300.
It's good.
Like you said, Yair was piecing him up. I don't like when Brian Ortega becomes a punching bag on the feet. It happened against Volk. It happened against Max. It happened against Yair. So I hope during this time off he was working on his wrestling, because I really think wrestling is the key to unlocking a lot more success for these guys who have really good jujitsu. All that being said, I really like Yair by TKO at plus 180. I don't think he's going to knock Brian Ortega out because Brian Ortega has a really good chin, but I could see a situation where the ref waves off the fight because Brian's too bloodied up. You know, he's going to have his face is going to be mashed up. He's going to be bleeding. I could definitely see a standing TKO for Yair. So
One
that would
thing
be
working
my
in
pick.
Ortega's favor is that he's undergone the rebirth. I don't know if you saw that. He's undergone a rebirth, which has been posted on social media. It's referring to an eagle. When an eagle reaches 40 years old, he goes up in the mountains and isolates himself, and he busts his beak up against a rock, and then he destroys his beak. He plucks all his feathers out, and then they grow back, and its beak grows back, and then they can live another 30 years. And that's what Ortega has said that he's been doing. Now, I don't actually think that that's true. I
That,
want,
that
but
sounds
that's
like a
what Brian
phoenix.
Ortega
It's like
said
a
at Media Day
mythical.
yesterday, or the other day. Yesterday? Yeah, yesterday. So Brian Ortega's rebirth, maybe he busted that beak up on a rock and he grew a new one. Maybe his chin is stronger than ever, and he's going to spread those wings and go on another title run. We'll see.
That's funny. That sounds like a phoenix. That sounds like
It
some
sounded like
sort
a
of
Tito Ortiz
Mexican
quote, if I'm
mythology.
being honest. It sounded like
Yeah.
something Tito Ortiz would say about the lion. Remember, the quote about the lion and
Yep.
all that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, we've got one fight
And
left.
then
It is the
Chael
main
Sonnen was
event.
like, no, talk about the lion again.
Yep. Yep.
One of the best press conferences ever, by the way.
Oh
Go back and
man.
watch it.
Yeah, so we got a main event. Brandon Moreno, he's a minus 290 favorite. He's taking on Brandon Royval, who is a plus 235. Obviously, Moreno's there. He was the first Mexican-born champ in the UFC, so he's going to be fighting in front of his home crowd. So there's good reason why he's a heavy favorite. Jesse, give us your thoughts.
I'm going to be pretty quick on this one. I think I'm just basing it off of how they performed against the current champion, Alessandro Pantoja. And I thought Moreno was levels above Royval in terms of how they managed to fight against Pantoja. I think Moreno's boxing is fucking the top of the division. I think he's probably the best boxer in that division. I think that obviously it's flyweight, so he lacks some of the power. I think Royval obviously has a puncher's chance. The first, I don't remember how many rounds it was. If it was the first round when when Royval, similar situation to the Yair Ortega fight, where his shoulder popped out as well, and so that fight ended early. But I do think that Moreno, similarly to Yair, did some things that led to that, even though Royval would deny it. I'm betting comfortably on Moreno here. I'm just having trouble with the money line,
Yeah.
so I'm either thinking decision, or I think Moreno decision plus 140, I think is where I'm leaning on this. Because I don't think he's going to knock Royval out or anything like that, unless it's a TKO. I think decision plus 140 or put him in a parlay.
Yeah, I tend to agree. That was going to be my pick. Moreno by decision plus 140 is a lot better than Moreno on the money line minus 290. So you get a lot more value. Moreno via KO or TKO is a plus 300, but it's always a good bet. And this is not a knock on the little guys. It's always a good bet to get to place money on decisions for the smaller guys and for women. Just statistically, wow, that was a hard word. Statistically, they are the divisions that get the least amount of finishes. So I really like Moreno by decision. You recoup some of that value. But like I've been doing with all the picks, if you want to go with the underdog, Royval is a 235 on the money line, but he is a plus 700 by submission. I think submission is his best chance to win. He does have good submissions. He choked out Kai Kara France. He's choked out a bunch of guys. So if you want to take that risk for plus 700, that's where I would put it. Otherwise, I think Moreno wins this fight via unanimous decision.
Yep, I agree. I'm trying to pull it up how we would parlay this, but my DraftKings Sportsbook app is a little frozen right now. Oh no, here we go. Okay, so let's go to MMA. We're gonna parlay the three picks. We're unanimous. We've picked all three of the same picks. We've taken the favorites on this card. So this is
Yep.
we're taking the Mexicans and the favorites on this card. I think that it's pretty safe.
Everyone's a Mexican except Brandon Royval, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, the Mexican favorites. And so
Yes.
I'm gonna take the Mexican favorites in a parlay.
And I guess Brian Ortega and Raul Rosas Jr. are Mexican Americans. So if we want to get,
if you take
precise about
right,
this.
but if you take Moreno, Yair, and Rosas in a parlay, it's not amazing. It's a plus 222. So if you want
That's
to,
on the money line though.
yeah, that's money line. So if you get a little extra value if you pick on
Do
the
this. Moreno decision.
yeah. What do you mean?
Plug it in.
All right.
Moreno by decision.
Okay.
Yair by TKO.
Okay, hold on. Yair by TKO.
And Rosas
Got it.
by submission.
And
That's
then
going to be a lot better.
Rosas by submission. You have got, oh yeah, $10 pays $112 at a plus 1029. Let's go.
Very
Thanks
nice.
for joining me, Timmy.